Gentlemen, welcome. Prime Minister, thank you very much for your opening words and your inspirational comments. We're so excited for what the next 3 days will hold. Gentlemen, please do take a seat. So what better way to start this summit than discussing what makes Bhutan so unique in the world, and to try and understand what lessons we can all take from Bhutanese culture and philosophy. A philosophy which believes if we had greater regard for the well-being of others, we would opt for an economy that is at the service of the people and not people at the service of the economy. I'm delighted to be joined for this session by two extraordinary teachers of Himalayan Buddhism, Dzongsar, Jamyang, Khyentse, Rinpoche, and Matthieu, Ricard, who will take us through what Buddhism is really all about and a mindful society in the contemporary world. A warm welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being with us. Rinpoche, if I could start with you. Could you explain to us how the concept of mindfulness is understood in Buddhism?
This is not an easy question. It's a bit like if I ask you what is mathematics or neuroscience. Also, this phenomenon called mindfulness, it has been so much hijacked or corrupted or diluted. We don't even know what people are talking about these days. It's a bit like fortune cookies sold in Chinese restaurant, pretending to be sort of age-old Chinese tradition, which is not. And then there's also the language issue. In this case, I'm talking about the English word, mindfulness. I don't know how much of the word mindfulness is doing the justice to translate the word like smriti in Sanskrit. But I guess that's how it is with the language. You can't, you know, not all the language can be translated into another language, such as English word nice or flabbergasted. How do you translate that in Dzongsar? But I'll try to talk about mindfulness sort of very loosely, assuming that we are talking about the same thing. One thing, when we talk about mindfulness, we have to talk about mind. Now, there is a problem here because I don't know whether there is any phenomenon called mind that is mutually agreed between West and East or between scientists and Buddhists. But, and then another thing, mindfulness is not really it's not really an end. It's not really the goal for Buddhism. It's really a means. I mean, if a Buddhist, if the ultimate goal of Buddhists is to be mindful all the time, doesn't sound much fun, does it? But anyway, I'm sorry, taking a bit of time to answer your question. If you ask me what is mindfulness, I think I would like to sort of say something opposite of mindfulness, which is, I guess, I don't know whether there's an English word, mindlessness. I think there's a good English phrase called sleepwalk into war, sleepwalk into hope, sleepwalk into fear, sleepwalk into shopping, sleepwalk into defining, sleepwalk into valuing. And as long as we pay attention to mind and not ignore the mind, I think that is somewhat the foundation of the mindfulness.
Okay, thank you. It's a good start and a difficult topic, as you say. So you're going to pick up on that, Matthieu. The idea of mindfulness, as we've been discussing, has become very popular, certainly in the West, hasn't it? Could you tell us both from your Buddhist and a scientific background, what are the qualities and also the limitations of mindfulness as you see them?
Thank you. So yes, you know, one of the founders of Western psychology, William James, said if we could educate attention, it will be education per excellence. So basically, mindfulness is about being aware. So in the West, now they define it as attentive, non-judgmental attention to the present moment. So that's very, very narrow. So Buddhism has so first of all, attention is an indispensable tool, as Rinpoche said. For anything else you want to cultivate to become a better human being, whether it's altruism, resilience, inner peace, or whatever, if you are distracted endlessly, which we are most of the time. Daniel Gilbert at Harvard published a paper saying a distracted mind is an unhappy mind, because he asked people 10 times a day, is your mind on what you are doing? And more than half of the time, they were not. And it also happens that if say, what is your state of well-being from 1 to 10, they are usually less happy when they are distracted. So William James taught that we cannot maintain our attention more than a few seconds. There was another study that goldfish can maintain attention for 7 seconds and human being for 9. There's not very much. So there's a goldfish civilization with multitasking and all that. But fortunately, I think William James would have been very happy to know that people who went to the lab and did the comportamental test, in Madison, Harvard, and Princeton, and so forth, people who have done between 10,000 hours and 50,000 hours, that's a bit a lot, I know, of attention training, together with training in compassion and others, they were significantly more attentive. They could maintain a sustained attention for like 45 minutes. Why do they change air traffic controllers? Because after 10 minutes, attention declines. So attention can be cultivated as a skill. But the trick here is attention is a tool. Indispensable tool, but it's ethically neutral. It's like a hammer can be used to build or to destroy. 9/11 people were very smart in what they did, to hijack all these things with a few razor blades. But of course, they were not benevolent at all. So a sniper, he is told to kill someone, so he's non-judgmental, he controls his emotion, and he has to be really attentive. But there's no caring sniper, there's no compassionate sniper. So in Buddhism, mindfulness is intimately imbued with ethics. Is to be mindful, what is your state of mind? And for a Buddhist, how does it compare with the teachings of the Buddha? Is it ethical or not? Does it benefit others or harm others? And then you have to be mindful of the antidotes, patience against excitement, benevolence against hatred, detachment against the craving, and so forth. So that's quite different from non-judgmental. So if you are full of hatred, why you should be judgmental. This is no good for anyone. So in that sense, in Buddhism, mindfulness is a much broader spectrum. And so the risk is to fall into educated mindfulness in enterprise so that they work more without being stressed. So that's not really ethical. So I think it's very important to know the background. And there's nothing specifically Buddhist, to become a good human being should be everyone's goal in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And compassion is a key part of Buddhism as well, isn't it? And again, should be part of everybody's life. But explain to us what part it plays in Buddhism, compassion.
I sometimes think that compassion is very much synonymous to mindfulness, from the way I'm understanding. Because I think it's very important that we know that we have mind. As simple and as ridiculous or as obvious it may sound, most of us, we don't actually know that we have mind. And in Buddhism, there's a really systematic training to searching for the mind. And I think that's really important. For instance, mind for Buddhism, mind, Buddha is not outside. Mind is the Buddha. And actualizing that is what we call liberation. But mind can be also painful. For instance, this table doesn't have mind. So afterwards, when we don't use this table is not going to feel useless. If I bring another table, better looking one, this table is not going to feel jealous. We are talking about innovation. If there's no innovator, so to speak, so I think knowing that there is a mind within ourselves is important. The next, we need to know others have a mind. When we know that others have mind, then we will know that others have opinion, others have projections, what makes Joe happy doesn't make Vladimir happy, what makes, we will have a different perceptions and so on and so forth. And when you have that, that is what I call empathy. And empathy is like basically 99% of the compassion.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So Matthieu, tell us a bit more about altruism, compassion, which we've been talking about, which is key to Buddhism and to mindfulness. But how can we use these attributes to address the challenges of the 21st century?
So first of all, to complement, there's something in Buddhism called the 4 miraculous legs of, so what it means is the legs of attention that allow you to progress on the path, and miraculous because we are so distracted. So altruism and benevolence and compassion, whatever you call it, there's two things, on a personal level and a global level. On the personal level, when you are full of love for your children, for someone, unconditional love, only want that person to flourish in life, to be happy, to be spared suffering. This is the most, first of all, it's of course good for others, because it's meant to be the good for others. And it's also happened to be the best way to be satisfied. So one of the founders of positive psychology said it's supreme emotion, because that what brings more other constructive emotions. So if you are selfish, me all day long, makes your life miserable. In the bubble of selfishness, it's very stuffy. It's very unpleasant to live in there. So in the end of the day, you make everyone miserable, including yourself. It's a lose-lose situation. So on the personal level, benevolence, kindness, altruism, good heart is a win-win situation. Now, how does that reflect on the global level? So if you look at the most challenges of the 21st century, one of the main ones is to reconcile 3 time scale. The short term, a mother in Africa who needs to feed her kids for the next week. She doesn't care about the environment. She cannot. And also the very fast investment, milliseconds, transaction, and all that. Now there's the midterm. How can you have a fulfilled life? I mean, it's a right for everyone to not to suffer all life long. So that's the span of a generation, of a family, of a lifetime. So we need to provide the condition that allows people to flourish. Now there's a new challenge, which is the long term. 10,000 years ago, there was 5 million people on Earth. No big deal, although they already eliminated all the big species on Earth. But still, the impact, they could only throw things, so minimum impact. So now the power has gone millionfold, with all the kind of energy, technology revolution, but the amount of care hasn't grown as much as the element of power. So now we are responsible. We absolutely determine the fate of future generations. Our friend Nicolas Stern will tell you better than me. So they will say, you knew and you did nothing. Why can't we do anything? Because a delusion of responsibility. No, I don't wake up in the morning thinking I'm going to wreck the whole world. But in fact, the addition of all our of where we behave is doing that. So it is true that it's a treason for future generations. They have no voice because they are not there. Some philosophers said there's no right, because to have a right, you have to claim it and know about it. But there's a natural right that we know they will suffer, and so they have the right not to suffer. So now, if you want to put around the table social workers, investors, politicians, and scientific of the environment who get utterly depressed because everybody thinks they are troublemakers, and you want to build a better world, what concept will work? Selfishness, no. My favorite Marxist is Groucho Marx. He's a bit out of fashion now, but he said, why should I care for future generations? What did they do for me? Well, I'm sorry to say that I heard an American billionaire on Fox News say, well, the rise of the ocean, I find absurd to change my behavior now for something happening in 100 years. So no, he has no grandchildren or something. So if you want to bring all these people around the same table, only one concept can unify those 3 time scales. It's having more consideration for others. If you have more consideration for others, you will remedy to poverty in the midst of plenty. You will take care of the commons, the atmosphere, the promotion of democracy, of science, and so forth. You will get out of your promotion of selfish interests, because otherwise, if the invisible hand of the Homo economicus is the hand of a selfish and ignorant person, that's not going to go very well. So then we need an economy at the service of society and not society at the service of economy. So a caring economics. In the midterm, you need to provide at the nation level, in the society, better place to work, better place to educate our children, access to health, to freedom, and so forth. And in the long term, this is the ultimate challenge for altruism. We need to genuinely care for the billions and billions of human beings that will come. You know, my friend Johan Rockström evaluated that if we continue like that, if we reach to 4 degrees, human population will reduce to 1 billion. Not because of birth control, because of war, famines, 250 million refugees. So all that is a lot of suffering. Human beings probably survive, but at what cost? So we need to imbue compassion and altruism and a dare to say, to educate in a secular way in the schools, to implement in our life, and we need an altruistic, peaceful revolution.
Absolutely laudable goals, and I'm sure everyone will agree. I guess the difficulty is, and another tough question for you, is how do we do that? You know, that Bhutan is a small country that has managed to do that so successfully. How do other societies, other cultures try and replicate that? And where does it need to come from? Does it need to come from governments? You know, individuals on a small level can affect change in their lives and the people close to them. But does it come from the top down, or does it come from all of us implementing change?
I think there's so many, many ways. I think we need abundance of information. We need, I don't know, since there's a lot of marketing people, probably they could think of how to market mind.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many things that are not necessarily related to the mind, even though the mind is the most important. Marketing, and I guess the policy, and then also preserving the age-old tradition, the hierarchy, the legacy.
Yeah, and your thoughts, Matthieu?
Well, you know, we have to deal with our mind from morning till evening, whether we like it or not. And our mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. There are people who are quite happy in face of difficult situation. And there are people you hear of someone very famous, very rich, you know, beautiful, and then you heard he's taking antidepressant and try to commit suicide. You say, what's wrong with this guy? If I had all that, I would be happy. You know, there was a test in the US. They say, who you admire most, the Dalai Lama or Brad Pitt? So everybody said Dalai Lama. No, who you want to be? Oh, I prefer to be Brad Pitt. Why? Because they say, I will have the money, the beauty of Brad Pitt, and I can become like the Dalai Lama if I want. So basically, you know, we underestimate the power of transformation of mind. You know, the outer condition, of course we should improve, extreme poverty, inequalities, but our control of the outer world is limited, ephemeral, and often illusory. But we have at least some control on the mind. And this is the mind that translates outer condition in happiness or misery. It is the final sort of witness. So if we do change the way we experience the world, we change our world, because that's the one we experience from morning till evening. So it's worth doing, and it is possible, because the mind is plastic, the brain is plastic. So all the 2,500 years of contemplative science in Buddhism show that, and neuroscience has been shown with that also since 20 years.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind me asking you a personal question each, which is, you know, we've all come across problems and difficulties in our lives, and they say the challenge is how you overcome those. And for some people, it's very difficult. And I'm interested, no, for everybody, we all have times in our lives that are difficult.
I don't know how others do it. I don't do it quite good job.
Well, I was going to ask, have you had a moment, I'm sure you must have, that you've had a personal challenge, and how have you used mindfulness and your practices to overcome that?
I guess just the fact that there's a lot of hearing, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of contemplation on it, kind of helps you to have some sort of a mindful environment or mindful reminder. Other than that, as I said, I don't want to claim myself being, expert in being mindful.
Okay, thank you. Matthieu?
I'm sorry.
I was just asking if you've ever had a time where you've used mindfulness and your practices to overcome a personal challenge.
Challenge?
Yeah.
Well, laziness, chronic laziness, delusion, looking for happiness in the wrong place, and also distraction. We are endlessly distracted. So to be mindful, to be satisfied. My favorite mantra is I need nothing, I need nothing, I need nothing. That's such a relief. If you go in a supermarket and I say I need nothing. So it feels so good. So there's all these things. Anyway, any of the major basic human qualities, mindfulness, compassion, resilience, inner peace, can be cultivated as skills. That's what Buddhism says. That's what neuroscience says. So we should go for it. Otherwise, we stay at the baseline. We are not born learning how to read and write and solve differential equations of mathematics. We learned that. We spent 15 years in education. Why do we think that, that's how I am, is take it or leave it? No, of course. This is our baseline. And we're not going to be Olympic champions of attention, but there's always a huge margin of change. And that comes with mind training. So the real point of mindfulness is training your mind to become a better human being so that you can better serve others.
Okay, thank you. Now, I have a problem that can't be fixed by mindfulness, which is that I can't access the questions on the iPad, so I need some tech help. If you could just come and give me a hand, please, because I'm sure we have some here. Okay, thank you. It's always the tech, or it is for me anyway. Bear with us. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Okay. So let me just have a look at some of these questions. We've had this question in, what do you see as the building blocks for empathetic economics? That's a tough one. Empathetic economics, the building blocks. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yes, of course. I don't know, I'm speaking about few Nobel Prize of Economics, so it's a bit strange. But nevertheless, I'm friends with someone called Dennis Noer, and he pointed out that the classical way of maximizing personal preferences and purely economics based on reason cannot solve two main issues. Poverty in the midst of plenty. If you buy t-shirts in Bangladesh, you have no incentive to increase the price of the workers there. Because the reason tell you, let them, in these terrible conditions. So you have to step out of maximizing your personal preferences. The second one is the common. The commons means, again, the quality of the air, of the ocean, of democracy, of advancements of knowledge, of science. Again, you can be a free rider all your life long. So you need to get out of it. So we need to associate the voice of care along the voice of reason. So that's absolutely crucial. Again, so that, also we balance the three index of financial wealth. Kuznets, who found the idea of GDP, he said this is not a way to measure the well-being of a nation. It's a financial measurement. And also environmental wealth. Bhutan here has so many forests. It's in the constitution that at least 60% has to remain in natural state. That's 20 times the GDP, but it's environmental wealth. Social wealth. You smoke, it's good for GDP. You get cancer, it's good for GDP, you have to get treatment. Then you die, you have to be carried and cremated and all that. That costs money. So all that is good for GDP, but it's a minus for social wealth. In France, they count in the GDP prostitution, drug trafficking, but not 12% of the GDP about voluntary work. So that doesn't count. Why? This is a social wealth. So we have to balance those three. So that, again, that economy is the service of society.
Okay, thank you. Rinpoche, this one is for you. What specific practices of mindfulness and compassion can be implemented to foster a vision for peace and prosperity in communities?
I think, as I was mentioning before, I think most fundamental thing is to acknowledge that we have mind. As I was saying, as simple as it may sound, or we may think that, we know, we take for granted we have mind, but actually we don't think deep enough. Mind has a certain ability that no others have, something so unique. Like lamp, light, it illuminates surroundings, but also it illuminates itself. Likewise, mind understands or interacts with the objective world, but mind is also capable of seeing itself simultaneously. So let's say if I'm losing my temper, or let's say I'm getting excited, I can train myself to be conscious of that. And you may ask me, what's the point of that? What's so big deal? This is very big deal because when you are conscious of whatever is thinking, whatever you are thinking, chances of you being worked up, you being fanatical, polarized, chances of you becoming, I don't know, stupid, basically. So first, and the most fundamental is, I think, knowing the mind. Both Matthieu and I share one spiritual master, Khyentse Rinpoche. And I remember this very well. I was barely about 9, and it was in a place called Kichu Monastery. It's quite near here. And there's a giant statue of Guru Rinpoche. It was built by royal grandmother. And the right foot sticks out. I was very young. I can't touch the right foot. One day, my teacher, Khyentse Rinpoche, summoned me, and I went there. He was standing there. He could touch. He was a tall man. And I didn't know what he was going to ask. He said, "Do you have head?" I looked right and left, and I didn't know what he was up to. So I said, "Yes." Then he said, "Where?" Then again, I looked right and left, and I said, "Here." Then he kept on asking questions like, "Do you have feet? Do you have hands?" So on and so forth. Suddenly, he asked, "Do you have mind?" And then I mindlessly said, "Yes." Then he asked me, "Where?" And that question being asked, not necessarily for answer, because getting the answer is not the point. I sometimes wish that in today's world, if kids are being asked the same question, it would really benefit.
Thank you. On that note, we will end this session. Rinpoche and Matthieu, thank you so much for your insights. Thank you. Thank you. And now I will hand over to Mark for our next session. Thank you so much.